I don't know that I've ever, all the podcasts and interviews I've done, I don't know that I've ever had that asked.
Bring it in. Frankie Rob, how you doing, my brother?
Man, I'm doing good, man. You know, everything's smooth here. I'm excited. You know, what we're doing today is my first time ever, you know, being in a conversation about it, but I'm excited, man, to learn, you know.
Awesome.
How you doing?
Awesome, man. I'm doing good, man. A little busy today. It's been raining all day, but, you know, when we do these podcasts, man, to bring a lot of energy out of me, man. So, like, I'm just ready to kind of get started, man, and introduce some of the people who don't know about this topic, give them some understanding on it and the importance of it, man. So let's break right into it. We have Clay Dade with us today. He has one of the top premier all-star camps in the country for kids that around the age of middle school, 9th grade, and 10th grade. Clay Dade, how you doing?
Doing great today. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing fine, man. We're doing great, man. We're glad to have you on the podcast, man. We got a lot of questions for you. And first of all, let's go ahead and start with your background before we even get into your awesome camp that you have.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. So I am originally from Washington, D.C., grew up in the D.C. area. And you know, like most folks, came up a pretty normal background in terms of participating in sports at an early age and wanting to play everything, basketball, football. Grew up in the boys clubs. My father was a director of many D.C. boys clubs in the inner city. So that put me at a young age, introduced me to not only sports, but just a lot of things growing up in the city. And, you know, it gave me a good idea about who I was early on in life. And, you know, gave me some dreams and some aspirations to shoot for, because when you grow up in the area I did, you know, there's always a lot of talent in sports around. And so we had a lot of guys to look up to. So, you know, my background early on was really shaped by the guys that I grew up around, and just the culture of sports enthusiasm and just it being popular among young boys, you know, in the D.C. area. And so, you know, I would go on to leave the public school system and get an opportunity to get, you know, some help and scholarship and attract the attention of the well-known and prestigious Catholic League in basketball in D.C. Many people know about some of those Catholic League schools, like DeMatha High School and and St. John's High School and Gonzaga High School and O'Connell High School and back in our day it was also Carroll High School, where Big John Thompson went in the 50s, and then, you know, later they had a lot of really good players through the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s. And then there was Mackin High School. Wade, you might remember Johnny Dawkins. Johnny Dawkins, former NBA player, and Duke's at one time, for a long time, he was Duke University's all-time leading scorer. But he was also probably more famously known as Coach K's really first big recruit that started him winning and put him over the top. Because Coach K struggled. A lot of people don't know Coach K at Duke struggled for his first 4 years, and he was really on the ropes. And Johnny saved the Duke program. Well, Johnny Dawkins was one of my idols growing up in D.C. He's from D.C. We played a lot on the playground and around town in various locations. He played high school at Mackin High School, Mackin Catholic. And so all of these guys I looked up to in high school. I went to Good Counsel High School. You guys may have heard of Roger Mason, played in the NBA a long time, a sharpshooter, long-range shooter, and many football players that have come along and played in college football and even in the NFL here recently over the last 10 to 15 years. We've produced a lot of those guys. But anyway, so I was fortunate enough to really work hard and be talented and named a high school All-American in the 80s, 84, 85, and got recruited by quite a good number of schools at a high level. Everyone from Navy to Kansas State to ACC schools like Wake Forest. Also back during then, you recall, a lot of people from that era recall Seton Hall. Seton Hall was really turning the corner and becoming a really good program, so I got recruited by them. And surprisingly, not by the big schools in our area. Georgetown back then was a juggernaut, a powerhouse, and Maryland did not attract the attention of them. But a lot of teams that they played, I did get recruited by. So ultimately, I chose Wake Forest and to play in the ACC, and they already had Mugsy Bugues, the shortest player in NBA history.
Oh, yeah.
And so, so I backed up Mugsy Bugues, and even, of course, played against him every day in practice, and made me a much better player. And I ended up transferring and finishing my 3 years, due to a coaching change at Wake Forest. A new coach came in who did not recruit me, along with the 5 other freshmen that came in my year. And so 5 out of those, actually 6 freshmen, 5 out of the 6 transferred. Only 1 stayed, and he stayed all 4 years. So I transferred to Winthrop University, which is right near Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's on the state line between Charlotte and South Carolina. It's actually in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And some people might be familiar with Winthrop because in the 90s and into the 2000s, they were a perennial NCAA tournament team in college basketball because they had one of the great coaches in college basketball, Greg Marshall, before he moved on to Wichita State. Okay. So, but I didn't play for him. I finished up there in 1990. And helped lead my team, Winthrop, to its first ever conference championship title in the Big South back then. And played point guard and started, and I had a pretty good career the rest of those 3 years there. And then I wanted to get into basketball in some way, and I was looking around on how I could do that. And I ended up taking an internship in between graduate school. Took an internship working with the NBA's Orlando Magic. So I was there during the really strong years of coming out of expansion years and now starting to be a real contender. And I helped draft Penny Hardaway. I was involved in that draft, and I was there during Shaq's rookie year, so he was already there, and learned a lot and really used that experience to do the next things in my career, which at that point I was in my 20s. And, I had a lot of relationships established because a lot of the coaches who recruited me in high school wasn't that long ago. A lot of those guys were now moving either up into major programs as big-time assistants, or they were already head coaches, and so they needed players. And they, in the coaching and basketball business, you really use your relationships, and you have to rely on those relationships to get places. And so a lot of those guys were fresh new faces on the college basketball scene as head coaches. And so I found a way to convert my NBA experience to helping these guys recruit and even identify players. So that was 26 years ago, and I haven't stopped since. So back then, in the early to mid 90s, I had a scouting service that was a video scouting service. So this was really before the internet got big, and I don't even think the internet was going then. And it was really before, NBA teams and college programs expanded their in-person scouting core and staffs. So what I would do is I would be their eyes for them. I figured out from my NBA experience that I could provide a service to them via video. So I would go around, I started out in the D.C. area locally, but then I expanded and went national. And I was going all over the country and eventually all over the world, identifying players, and I would use video to capture them, playing in person. I would set up a camera. I would literally do all the shoots, and I knew how to shoot and I knew how to edit tape because that's what I did in the NBA with the Orlando Magic. And so I would break the tape down after shooting it, and I'd get it distributed out to teams that were subscribing or coaching staffs in college. So I had all 30 NBA teams using this service and paying me a pretty penny, and then I had to sell it to them that, hey, you don't have any eyes and ears out there for the high school guys. Let me be that. I've got the NBA background, so they trusted that, and all it took was me getting one team, and once I got one team, I got the other 29. So I figured if I could do that for the NBA teams, I should be able to do it for college. Okay. And of course, with college, they were interested in a broader pool of talent because the really good high school guys that were going to go direct to the NBA when that was still in play and in effect, guys like Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett and all those guys. I captured all those guys on video. Tony Parker overseas in France. I went over to France. I was invited to a tournament to scout it, and I ended up discovering him and got him on video. I got Dirk Nowitzki on video, and nobody in the world didn't know about these guys yet, and the NBA definitely didn't know about them yet. And so, I take a lot of pride in introducing a lot of teams and people to these guys. Eventually, late in the 90s, my video would start. A lot of people listening audience might be familiar, when you're watching the NBA draft on what used to be Turner and TNT, TBS. Mm-hmm. Now it's on ESPN, but you're watching on TV, and sometimes you see these grainy videos of guys from overseas in Europe or wherever they are, Africa or wherever. And that was me. I was the one shooting a lot of these grainy videos that obviously the quality would improve with technology over the years. But, these networks, CNN, TNT, TBS, Turner, ESPN, they didn't have a lot of sources to get video. And so they didn't care where they got it as long as they had something they could show during the broadcast, during the telecast. And so, they would pay you for it. And it wasn't a lot, but at least you got your stuff on national TV. They rarely gave you, a credit, like a little bug, video courtesy of whatever, But at least you got your stuff on TV and you could talk about it, and people knew it was you that worked in the business. So that was pretty cool. And I ended up selling that business and spinning it off and really just getting more into developing my programming, what we call our properties or programming. And so event programming is where we start talking about camps and we start talking about, clinics or tournaments, and all these things are what we call programming or events. And so, now I'm pretty deep into the high school basketball, college basketball, and even pro NBA space, and developing a bit of a name and a reputation. And my video scouting service got the attention of the Sporting News. Some of you guys may know Mike DeCourcy, a big, longtime senior college basketball writer. He's still with the Sporting News. Has been with them about 30 years. Well, yeah, and he's a good friend today to me. But he was one of the first to do a national feature, a national story on me and on my service, which was unique back then, the video service and video scouting service. And so, so after that, I really started getting into doing more events and building out our event portfolio and properties. And so in the 90s and the early 2000s, I was focused mostly on high school events, and even helped with a new pro basketball league get launched. You might remember the IBL, the International Basketball League. Okay. So I was involved in the launch of that on a number of different levels, and of course, including scouting. But in 2006 is when we, came up with the idea and saw a need in the marketplace for a younger camp, a camp targeting young, developing, talented players that had not, that were not of high school age. There were plenty of camps for the top high school players and for, and for other second and third tier high school players. Plenty of camps and plenty of platforms for those guys. But there really wasn't anything except, I think the Phenom camp was first. They were in 2000. They launched in like 2002 or 3. So we come along in 2006, and we actually have our first camp in the summer of 2007, which was Fat Frosh camp, and then, Junior All-American camp, which is actually the original name and original camp, was for the younger elementary, middle school age guys. Yep. Kind of our entry-level gateway camp. Yeah. So I know, Coach Wade. I know your son Sean, who's now at Ohio State and a big-time football player. Sean obviously was a two-sport kid. Probably played baseball too, I bet. But great athlete, and out of Jacksonville, and so Sean is an alum of our camps, Junior All-American camp, Fat Frosh camp, and great story. And so we've had a number of guys over the years that I think it's over 80 now. The count is up to over 80 McDonald's All-Americans started out at our camps. Since 2012, it's been over 80. Then we've had hundreds of guys get invites to the USA basketball programs, tryouts, and the Jordan Brand game. We've got over 50 alumni that are currently on NBA rosters. Actually, more now because this draft just produced a lot more. So we have to do the numbers, but it's probably up over 70 now that are going to start the October new NBA season on NBA rosters or in the NBA franchise. They stash them in the G League or whatever. So we're pretty established and pretty proud of the history and track record. And as I said, I'm a lifer in terms of basketball. Been in it at every level. Coached overseas. Actually coached a U.S. select team and put the team together and would select and identify high school guys that we wanted to take over. And it started in 1999 with David Hawkins, who was a great pro overseas, and he's become most known here in the last 2 or 3 years for being one of the standout players in the Big Three, the 3-on-3 league that Ice Cube runs. Okay. David Hawkins at Washington, D.C., big-time player in college at Temple. I think he's Temple's all-time leading scorer. And he played on that first team we took overseas and won a tournament, the big tournament in France. I discovered Smush Parker. We had Casey Jacobson. So many players we've had over the years, too many to kind of remember. And so I've done quite a bit in basketball. I've been very fortunate. We used to have a game that was very much like the McDonald's All-American game called Next All-American Classic. Out of that game, these are guys that did not get selected for the McDonald's All-American game or the Jordan Brand Classic or games like the Elite 24. Out of our games, the Next All-American Classic, we had guys like Ben McLemore, who also, like Bradley Beal, was a St. Louis Eagle AAU Nike team and went on to go to Kansas, had a great year, freshman year at Kansas, and wound up being a lottery pick in the NBA and you know, started out his NBA career really well in Sacramento. And nobody's really heard from him lately, but really talented kid. We had the kid Dorian Finney-Smith, who started last year for the Dallas Mavericks. So we had a number of guys that got overlooked, so to speak, and now they're doing big things. And so Fab Frosh Camp just completed its 13th year in May. We had our 13th camp, Super Soft Camp. We had our 10th annual Super Soft in the beginning of June. We had the country's top rising high school sophomores once again, 100 of them. And then coming up here in August and September, we will have our 13th annual Junior All-American Camp. So if we got any parents or any 4th, 5th, and 6th graders out there, hit us up. We'd love to have you on August 24th and 25th. And if you're in 7th and 8th grade this school year, hit us up. We'd like to have you September 7th and 8th. Both those camps are in Atlanta. And, we're all over Instagram and Facebook and Twitter.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. So just give us, before we get into like the questions, because we got a lot of questions we want to ask you about the development of kids. But before we get into that, could you give us a couple more names that's been to your camps, some current players, so I can get the eyes of some of my audience?
Oh my God, Jason Tatum, Boston Celtics. D'Angelo Russell. Yeah, there's too many. D'Angelo Russell, Golden State Warriors. If you throw out a team, I can. Every year, by the way, it seems like Kentucky and Georgetown, more than half their team, is alumni of our camps. Okay. I'm told by college coaches every summer they go to Peach Jam, the big Nike event in July, and every some of those guys hit me up and say, "Man, you told me about this kid back in 8th grade, or when he was an incoming freshman. He's blowing up now. We need to get on him, or we're recruiting him now." I get stopped all the time. Man, Clay, more than half of the kids in Peach Jam came through your camps. So,
any of the Duke kids go? Zion Williamson, any of those guys?
Yeah. We just, I'm known, pretty known for being we're pretty known for being the first place that Zion Williamson really came on a national level. When it came to Super Soft Camp, he was 15. He was a rising sophomore. Nobody had heard of him. He had not hit his growth spurt. He was about 6'2", 6'2.5", and only about 200 to 210 pounds. He didn't have the big, jumping ability and high wire act that he became, but you could see it coming, and he actually had a great camp. Nobody expected it. Nobody knew about him. I knew he'd have a good camp. That's why I discovered him in January as a freshman leading the country in scoring among freshmen at 24.5 a game. I said, "Who is this? How do we not know about him for Fab Frosh Camp?" Well, it turns out, he wasn't ready for Fab Frosh Camp back a year earlier, but he worked and he got better and he got much more physically developed, and it got him attention to come to Super Soft Camp. Like I said, I found out about him by just looking on maxpreps.com, and I said, "Who's this kid at this small school in South Carolina who's averaging 24, almost 25 points a game as a freshman?" And so I started asking around in South Carolina, and none of my guys who are program directors there, or none of them really knew who he was, or if they did, they were like, yeah, he's all right. You know, they didn't really see, and that's my gift. My gift is my ability to see a kid's, potential and to kind of have an instinct about, how he might turn out. That's been my gift. Mm-hmm. So when you look at guys like Quinn Cook, Quinn Cook, nobody thought much of back in high school. And we're talking before he went to Oak Hill. He was at DeMatha High School in the D.C. area. Well, we know Quinn Cook went on to win a high school championship. He went on to win a national championship at Duke and played 4 years there. Even though he went undrafted, look what he did going undrafted. He turned down money overseas and played his first 4 years of his pro career in the G League, and it got him on the world champion Golden State Warriors, and he earned a ring. I mean, he was actually a contributor on that last Golden State championship team. Right. And of course, that gets him as a free agent. That gets him the job with the Lakers. He got picked up and signed by the Lakers over the summer this year. So he's a real success story. D'Angelo Russell's a real success story. Emmanuel Mudiay, who just got, I think he got traded or signed as an unrestricted free agent with out in Utah. He started some games with the New York Knicks last year. He was the third or fourth pick in the draft. So, I mean, Jahlil Okafor, who went number 1 in the draft, or number 2. Zion, I think, was our first or second overall number 1 guy. Our first was Karl Towns. Okay. I think Karl Towns went number 1. So, I mean, we've got so many guys in the NBA. Jaylen Brown from the Celtics also. Jaylen Brown's a great young player, great young talent. So we just got so many guys. Oh, Trae Young. Can't forget Trae Young.
Trae Young. So let me ask you. So Fab Frost and Super Soft, both of those camps are invitation only, meaning the only way you can get in is invitation, right?
Yeah, but, you can get in. If you can play, you can get in. I mean,
But I'm just saying, a kid that can't play can't get in.
More than likely, if they're not really where those other guys are at that stage, whatever camp it is, then we don't really advise it, because you want to be somewhere where you got a shot at standing out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You don't want to you don't want to stand out in the wrong way.
Okay. So if I'm a parent, I got this kid, and from Jacksonville, Florida, where we're from, and he hears this podcast, and one of his goals, which is, I tell kids, one of my goals is to get into one of your camps, especially the Fab Frost. If you want to get your name on the map or stuff like that, Fab Frost, I got your son's jersey hanging on my workout room wall downstairs, and I show kids all the time because I coach basketball. So,
thank you.
But that's one of the markers. But anyway, so like, what would you say about getting your attention so your kid can get into that camp?
Yeah, I mean, you really, if you don't reach out to us, and we haven't reached out to you, then, you probably want to reach out to us. You can get us on social media. We're on everything. You can, what do the kids say, slide in our DMs or reach out to us. You can email us at hoop1llc@gmail.com, hoop, HOOPONE, the word 1, LLC @gmail.com, and just say, hey, wondering if, how do we go about trying to get an opportunity to come to camp? And
would they have to have video for you or what?
Typically, I mean, we're not big on video because video isn't really a good representation. We like to say, well, hey, where are you going to be playing next? What are the tournaments you're in? What are the other camps you've been to? How can we go check you out? Do you have some, if they really don't have, much to share on that, or if it's, then we'll say, well, can we find some YouTube or Huddle stuff out there? Or, but usually everybody these days has video. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we don't like to use it. We actually like to say, okay, if you're playing at, Tournament XYZ in Jacksonville, Florida, or in Orlando, we're going to send somebody out there. We'd like to watch you in person because we can see a lot more in person.
I got you.
There's still value in the eye test. There's still value in the eye test. So
it definitely is. But I got you, Clay. But I'm telling you, it's a considerable amount of people out there, especially where we're from in Jacksonville, that don't have any tape because they don't know. So that's why I'm doing this podcast. They don't know. They don't know how important it is to get your son's tape, not just for you and progression and to see the progression of your kid and the skills and stuff like that, but just to show other people. I remember getting Sean to play with Jeffrey Prophet. You remember Jeffrey Prophet from Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, of course.
And so the way we
wouldn't have known about Sean.
Yep. We
wouldn't have known about Sean if we didn't see Jeff Prophet and the other kid that was on that loaded team.
Abule.
And so,
Abule plays for Kentucky. He plays football for Kentucky now. But that video helped out when we went to nationals. So that was big. That was big.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So video is actually good. It has its place, but we don't want to see any video of guys in a workout. We want to see we get a lot of parents that send video of guys in a workout. That really doesn't do anything for us. We want to see a kid in a game. We don't just want to see highlights. We want to see a full game or a full sequence. We want to see a full sequence. So scouting is much more sophisticated than just seeing a guy score and shoot, and cross somebody over, and but mostly it's about scoring. It's about making shots and shooting. Everybody sends those videos. If you want to send a little short 2-minute video, that's fine, but accompany that with a full game, what we call a full game edit, where we can actually go through a full game and see a kid play in a full game, and just edit it so that it it's not real long, and we're just looking at when he's in the game and in the plays the live play. So we don't want to see any dead ball stuff or any free throws. We don't need to see that. But so that's one way of going about it.
So I don't mean to keep going in at you. I'm gonna get you in just a second.
No, it's fine.
But another thing too is I tell people how important it is once they get into your camp to video themselves going against the best people in the country, and it's the same type of effect because a lot of parents say that rankings are political. No, I feel that rankings in some way are political, but it's a method to the madness, meaning that if you can find your kid playing against some of the best kids in the nation and put that tape out there so those people from the rivals, 247, ESPN can see it, that's a way to get your son's name or daughter's name out there. What you think about that?
I agree. I mean, we're in an age now where, like it or not, for better or for worse, this is an age of visual. First of all, it's a visual age. Everything is visual / video, and whether it's accurate or not, whether it has its place or not, and whatever people's opinions are on it, it's out there. The train has left the station, and the hay is in the barn, if you will, and that says that I say that to say that it has its place. And if you don't, somebody else will. In other words, if you're a parent or you're a coach and you're trying to help a kid, there's always another kid that somebody's trying to push. And so, whatever you can do, just don't be, I caution parents, don't be too over the top where you seem like you're, you remember the old rappers that had hype, what they call hype man or hype, they had their hype guy or whatever. It's really annoying, and it's kind of self-aggrandizing and self-aggrandizement. because most parents get drunk on it. They get really drunk and go over the top on it, and they just do it for years and years. And then you get parents later, and I just had another one do this just recently. A pretty good player, he's a Division I player, and he's got great size, but he's unsigned. Nobody will touch him, and it's mostly because you got a lot of parents that recruiters, college staffs, and college coaches, they either get word of the parent being, kind of high maintenance and a little too over the top about their son's recruitment, or the perception is out there that that's how they are. And so whether it's accurate or not, you really don't want to be too much of your son's promoter. You kind of want to leave for some organic exposure and promotion. In other words, let the kid kind of grow into his reputation. In fact, that's what happened with Zion. Okay. His parents, they weren't pushing him to get in Super Software. They weren't pushing video outlets to, of course, this was really a little before the video outlets became what they are today. And that was just 4 years ago. So think about that. But now they're just out of control. Everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got a video. There's this new thing called Overtime. I guess they've been around a couple years, and they're big. So, that stuff wasn't around 5 years ago as heavily. And so I would say that video is important. It definitely has its place. If you're at our camp or any camp, you certainly want to get video of your child and how he's doing and capture that. But, especially get it playing with and against top players and top talent. But just keep it in perspective. Don't go over the top. Don't be having it all over, Twitter and all over that. Just kind of use it strategically. It's meant to be used strategically, and you don't want to overexpose a kid who honestly probably might not be that good, and that's more annoying than anything. So yeah, you got to be careful about that.
It's crazy. It's like some of the most annoying parents have some of the most humblest kids. Like I've seen it so much.
It's like an inverse relationship.
Yeah, it's just like something annoying. Like Wendell Carter Jr., man. I wouldn't say a name, but I got to say the name, man. Wendell Carter Jr., man. His mom is like out there, man. Like really out there. And like the kid is so humble, don't say nothing, none of that stuff.
He's an amazing young man. He's an amazing young man.
One of the things so far, I really wasn't big on the basketball scene. Except for growing up, I had a little cousin, Antonio Lawrence, who came out of Jacksonville, pretty highly rated player back then. Went to a lot of the camps, whatever, and based on his experiences, what he told me he went through, it was just like, it feels like the football environment is a little different than basketball. Like basketball, you got way more people trying to help in the basketball environment. So the question I have for you, Coach, is that, once the kid, say you get a kid, he's talented, he got what it takes, and he does go to college, or before he goes to college, is there any type of relationship that you have with them that they can call you for guidance or any type of thing like that? Do you keep that relationship open with them the whole time, or how's that go?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I don't know that I've ever, all the podcasts and interviews I've done, I don't know that I've ever had that asked. But the answer, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. The answer to that is yes. And I've got a little story I'll tell you, but the easy answer to that is yes. And we encourage that. I think and Mr. Wade can tell you, parents often after coming to our camp, we become friends or even Facebook friends or Instagram and they follow me and we keep in contact and keep build and grow a relationship. And most, if they don't, they should, but most know that they can reach out to me at any time, and if I can offer any guidance, any counseling, any advice, or just be a sounding board, or if I know somebody that they've crossed paths with, whether it be, whomever, or a college coach or whatever, and they say, hey, what do you think of this program? Or a lot of times parents will say, hey, I'm thinking about my son trying a different situation or transferring schools in high school or college. And they will often pick up the phone and bounce it off me, or we discuss it. So, I'm proud of that, that we can kind of keep those relationships going and be a resource, because that's really what you are, is a resource for folks. We love that. Happy to do it. I guess one of the most memorable, this is the story I was going to share, and one of the most memorable examples of that is in 2012. Wow, hard to believe it's been that long. That went quick, but some of you might remember Michael Gilchrist changed his name to Michael Kidd Gilchrist. Mm-hmm. He was in the first Fab Frosh camp we did, the inaugural 2007 Fab Frosh camp. And actually it would have been 2011, 12. Okay, 2012. So he graduated high school in 2011. After he left our camp, he was the number one player in class of 2011 for 4 years straight. So freshman year, sophomore year, junior, and senior. Yeah. Most know that he played for Kevin Boyle at St. Patrick's in New Jersey before Kevin Boyle went on to huge success at Montverde. He was a longtime coach in New Jersey at nationally ranked St. Pat's. And so Gilchrist played with Kyrie Irving in high school at St. Patrick's, and he was a great player. And he had a great camp at Fab Frosh camp. Well, after he had that quick freshman year with Anthony Davis on the national champion team, winning, they won the national championship at Kentucky with Coach Calipari. The draft was next. On draft day, this is in late June, I got a call, and I saw on the phone, it was the middle of the afternoon, probably about 2:30. The draft was later on that evening. It's on national TV. And I saw Kid Gilchrist's mother's name pop up on the phone of the call that was coming in. And I said, wow, what's Cindy doing calling me? Isn't she getting ready? Isn't she at the draft? So I answered, and I said, hey, Cindy, how you doing? She said, Clay, I just had to call you. You were on my heart. I was thinking about you. I wanted to reach out to you and tell you how much we appreciate you and thank you, because it was your camp, Fab Frosh camp, that really opened the floodgates for Michael and opened his eyes for himself and gave him the vision of what he could become. This is her words. And he, she said it gave him enormous confidence, and he used that as the springboard and it set the tone for the next 4 and 5 years. And he was the youngest rookie, I think, in the NBA history. It's like 17 years old in several months, and so his whole freshman year at Kentucky, he was 17. So, or turned 18 really late. So, that was an incredible feeling to get a call from her, because it just validated all the work and all the sweat and equity and, all the criticism, all the stuff you just go through as a stakeholder in this, not only basketball, but certainly in high school and grassroots basketball. It's just so much crap going on. So it was nice to get that affirmation from her. She said, Clay, you probably remember, we didn't talk to a lot of people. We had a very tight circle. I didn't have to do anything with him that summer, but when you drove up to Philly from D.C. and met with me at Michael's middle school game, we sat in the stands. She said, I just felt an authenticity about you, and it was down to you and sending him out to San Diego to the Phenom camp. We were only going to do one of those, all summer. We were only going to do one thing like that. And, and she's right. She never gave me any idea or signal that it was going to be us until it came time for camp, and I got the call, and Kyle Anderson's dad, who was also from up that way, and Kyle was coming to our junior All-American camp. He was a year or two behind him. He said, well, Cindy wants to have Michael come down, blah, blah, blah. And I said, that's great, and that's what happened. So that's how our relationship grew, and it's lasted ever since. Isn't that amazing how relationships can go from 0 to, 10 years just like that? So actually it's been 13 years now. So, that's kind of a great story. Shabazz Muhammad's another great story. He was 5'9" at Fab Frosh camp and didn't make any of the All-Star games. He came all the way from Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, we know Shabazz went on to be the number one player, like Mike Gilchrist, in that class of 2012 class for the next 4 years in high school, and played at UCLA the 1 year, was a McDonald's All-American, celebrated player, and got drafted by the Timberwolves, and played 5 or 6 years with them, and I don't know where he is now, but so these are all kind of the stories. D'Angelo Russell, just so many stories of guys that D'Angelo Russell came back and spoke at Fab Frosh camp. He's the only NBA player that we've had, I think, that came back and actually wanted to speak. He wanted to get up in front of kids, and he did that in 2014, I think it was, that was the camp that Wendell Carter was at.
Mm-hmm.
Sir.
Hello?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Coach, and I kind of got that gist of you being authentic and a naturally good person. And like I said, my son's a football player, but I do get that gist of that. And it's happy to hear that you do stick with the kids throughout, because some of them could be single parent, situations there, or could be like a parent like me who got a son going through all this recruitment, and we just don't know. So it's good that you're an advocate for, we do everything together, the village raising the child concept. It's good to hear that, you're one of the few in the country that actually does that. And I'm not saying nobody else does it, but, I don't even know about basketball, but I know football. It's not too many people actually sit with the kids through the whole process of recruiting and everything in there. So it's good to hear that it's out there for kids. And everybody listening, you got somebody that, that'll be an advocate, for your betterment, So it's good to hear, Coach. Thank you.
So Coach,
you're welcome. I appreciate it.
Coach, when Sean was going through, Think Fab Frost or whatever, because I'm going to lead into something on this. When Sean was going into Fab Frost, the man was Cody Riley. All right, Cody Riley was that guy. Yeah. He was that guy. But as things went along from 9th grade to 12th grade to into college, he really dwindled down. And I know you've seen a lot of kids that don't work. I'm not going to say that he doesn't work, but this is the era of the kids that work the best are going to be the best. It's not just about your talent anymore. Like, KDs, stuff like that. What you say about work ethic and how it started in the 9th grade and things change by the time you become a senior?
Yeah, I've seen it many, many times. Some guys, sometimes it's a case of, a young kid who's really celebrated at a young age. Really, really,
you're right.
Really celebrated at a young age. And they peak early and, then they drop off. That happens. Then you've got other cases, and I don't want to,
name
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what happened with Cody, but my guess is, Cody, if you recall, he left the Kansas City area to transfer, and his family moved out to California because they got an offer to play at that school where LeBron and D Wade's sons are, and where a lot of people have come through, Sierra Canyon, which is a very upscale You know, a lot of parents with a lot of money, multimillionaire student body and parents, and so they've got a really strong basketball program, and that's where you know, that's where he ended up. No, to finish on Cody, I think he's an example. I'm not sure of it, but it sounded like it. That, you know, he was going to school at a situation, and every day after school, you know, you're hanging out at Puffy's house, and you know, these are mansions, and you're around their kids, all these celebrities, and you know, you have a tendency to lose sight of, you know, what your opportunity really is, and maybe more importantly, you lose some hunger. You know, you're not as hungry because there's something to be said for, I won't say poverty, but there's something to be said for when you don't have everything already, and when you don't have a lot. And so if you're around those that already kind of so-called have it, or that don't have to grind, you know, and you kind of relax, and and people, not only when you relax, you kind of lose your hunger, but people pass you, so to speak. They surpass you. They become, you know, the guys, and you know, you're no longer the guy. And how do you respond to that? Well, a lot of guys who've been the guy, you know, they may not bounce back from that, or they may not bounce back right away, or bounce back too great. So somewhere in there, you know, it's probably somewhere along the line of what happened with Cody Riley, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of guys like that. And, you know, basketball is a very competitive space at every level now in our country, and just in general. So I think you're going to start seeing basketball become even more global and more interconnected, and that means more competitive, and competitive for jobs and open spots, just competitive in general, because the NBA is launching and opening and starting NBA Africa, which is the new pro basketball league that will feature African players under the NBA banner. So in other words, the Africa is going to be an outpost for NBA basketball. So the way the NBA plays basketball, the way the NBA puts on basketball, the way the NBA promotes and markets its brand and its sport, you're going to see all that happening in Africa in a big way too. They're going to make a huge investment.
Clay, that's very immense. On that same token, we did an interview with Narcisse Little's dad. We did it with him before, like
Harold Little.
Yeah, right before the draft, and like he was real busy. He gave us like 30 minutes. It was like one of the best interviews we did, and he talked about how what changed Narcisse's life was moving from Jacksonville to Orlando and having a trainer, and that trainer ended up training with him like on a daily basis, like for 2 years straight. And you know, Narcisse still has things he has to do in the NBA to make himself have a long career. He's going to be great, but have a long career. So what do you say about trainers and finding that trainer?
That's a big topic these days, trainers and training. I was joking with a buddy of mine. We went to smoke some cigars the other night in D.C. while I was still there. And a buddy of mine, Jimmy's probably 6'9". He played at Drexel. He's a D.C. guy. And we're laughing because we're like talking to him. And he does training. I mean, he's trained players for years, and he's excellent. And had a huge training company. I mean, he got his company up to $1 million in revenue annually, training. And he didn't even do the trainings. He leveraged himself and grew and scaled the business in basketball training. But anyway, he and I were joking that, hey, when we played, we just, not only did we play for the love, but we just played all day. I mean, we just just played. I mean, yeah, we worked in the gym on our game. And when we did, we didn't need anybody to put us through our paces, if you will. And we just did drills on our own, or we shot on our own. We literally were in the gym by ourselves working on our game. There was nobody with us. Or we would partner up and get with a buddy like Jimmy, and he and I would go in there and work on our games and all that. So that's number one. Number two is, we went and played playground. I mean, we didn't have AAU basketball. Really there wasn't a million teams. There was like one or two teams in DC, and if you weren't on one of them, and those were political, and that was only 20 guys between two programs, two teams, literally two teams. Sherman Douglas and Danny Ferry were on a team, and I wasn't on that team. They didn't, the organizer or coach of that team didn't pick me, and I was a big-time high school recruit. So what do you do? I mean, there was no Boo Williams organization. And so you just played. So if Johnny Dawkins and Lenny Bias, Lenny grew up down the street from us. If those guys were playing down in the park at it's Rock Creek Park, or, Rose Park, which is a outdoor court in Georgetown, the actual village of Georgetown, or the city within the city, near the campus of Georgetown University, or go down to Watts. Yeah, we had a playground called Watts, like Watts, LA. I mean, so this was Watts, and it was in the hood. It was it was deep in the hood. And so, or we went to University of Maryland and played check this out, we'd go to University of Maryland, we'd start somewhere during the day, play there, and then Johnny Dawkins and all those other guys I mentioned, Adrian Branch, all these guys, Lenny, we'd all go out to University of Maryland, and around their football stadium on the concourse level, outside, inside the fence, inside the gates, were basketball courts. And there were all these courts, literally courts, around the entire football stadium on the concourse level outside. So think of Ohio State Stadium, the horseshoe, and outside, inside the fence, inside the gates, but outside from the field and the stands. So that in between where you walk around the stadium, imagine there being basketball courts every 15 feet. They just go around the whole stadium. Well, those were like a public thing. So we would be out there court after court from maybe 8:30 at night to 2:30 in the morning balling. And so there wasn't anybody shooting out there. It wasn't anybody. So I give people that they say, well, you can't play outside today because of the dangers and the risk for, shootings and all that, and getting assaulted and all that. So I get that, and that's true. But we were blessed that we just were competing all the time. We were learning from each other all the time, how to play, how to compete, how to push each other. It created drive, it built character, and it taught us the game the right way. And, and it was unorganized. I mean, it was just go out and play. There were no refs. There was no uniforms. I mean, it was just, there wasn't even shirts and skins. You just played in what you had because you knew who was running with you. So, and we didn't have trainers. Today, I think there is some value to having trainers and doing training. You can see these guys are extremely skilled. Extremely. They have moves that I've never seen done, but we developed a lot of our instinctual basketball play. I think there's something to be desired for that in the game today, because you got a lot of kids that would otherwise be so-called inner city kids that, frankly, they got a lot of suburban in their game. And so, that would never happen back then because, the guys that were inner city, or the guys that were, kind of those that come from that background, we were all in the same places playing. And so you saw that when it came to the games, when it came to organized games in basketball. You saw it in high school. You saw it in college, in the games in college. You saw it in their games. So there was a place for instinctive play. And I think a lot of that is missing today, that a lot of it is not instinctive. A lot of it is choreographed. It's already been done in a training session, and it's now being played out in a real game atmosphere. So we miss a lot of the beauty and the art and the instinctiveness of basketball, and frankly, that's what makes it art. Is just the kind of like jazz. It's the improvisation. So training has its place, but I think there's way too much emphasis on it, in my view.
Okay.
All right, Coach, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So, Coach, I had a question for you. All right, so say, for instance, say if I have a son that getting the top-tier training, he's rated, pretty good, one of the best in the country, or I'm going to say one of the best in the country, but rated as a respectable player in the country, right? So, what I like talking about is kids that are on the border of getting ready to go to college, or how to look into college. Like, in your programs, I know you say you'll be there for them if they have questions, but is there certain things that you would tell a kid that don't, have the, feel like they can't ask you questions, right? So I want to ask a question that they may want to be answered. So with that being said, it's like, so what do they look like? I know in football, I give everything I can do. I got to compare to football. So I put it this way: like when it comes to you being recruited, like you were highly recruited, and you narrowed the colleges down to certain things. What were those things that you narrowed your options down to, and why did you narrow those down that fit you the best, or anything of that nature? How do you feel about that?
I think today, with 900 transfers a year, I think you got to look at I think you got to look at fit. I think you got to place fit above everything else. And fit. There's a lot that goes into fit. One, fit means do you have people interested in you? Number one. I mean, a lot of kids and families and parents want to be recruited, but they're not being recruited. And maybe they're not Division I players, or they're just not getting that love. And so while you shouldn't rest on that, you should continue to work and try to attract that attention. You can't rely on that coming through, so-called, because if fit means that the best fit right now is to play Division II basketball for that school that's recruiting you at the D2 level, or that happened to my cousin. He's a Division I talent and player, but he's going to a D2 school, and so I mean, or fit could mean maybe you thought you were Kansas good, but you wind up going to George Washington University in the Washington D.C. And so fit has a lot also today to do with playing time. You better be looking at places where you can it's pretty apparent that you're going to get playing time. So everybody wants to go to the biggest program possible, but fit may dictate that it's better to go to X program, which is 2 or 3 tiers or notches down from Kansas or Kentucky or Duke or North Carolina, and but it's a better fit. It's a better fit, and you end up playing and having a great career there because you made a good decision. And maybe at the end, we're seeing this a lot. Maybe you had such a great career that, your 4th or 5th year is a year that you decide that you want to kind of test the market, so to speak, and you look into transfer because you already know you're getting a lot of interest or there's a lot of interest out there probably for you, and you end up going to a bigger program, and which is a bigger stage. And we're seeing that today. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. So I would say number one is fit. Number two is, and this gets back to fit too, but it's playing style. It's culture. Not necessarily does their culture fit you, but do you fit them? See, a lot of parents and families focus so much on whether the program is right for you. Are you right for them? They have the leverage. Unless you're Zion Williamson or a McDonald's kid or a top 50 to 60 or 80 or even top 100 kid, most kids are not top 100 kids.
Yes.
The bulk of prospects are the 200 and 300 other players below the top 100, right? That's a huge pool of guys.
Huge pool.
So you need to be thinking from the perspective of, do you fit their culture? Do you see yourself getting playing time? Because, you know, if you're not a top 100 guy, they don't have to play you, you know. And even if you are, I've seen guys top 100 that can't, they end up transferring because they can't get on the court. Maybe they weren't prepared for college basketball well enough. Maybe they didn't get the coaching in high school from their coach, or maybe they can't make it through a college practice. They just can't grasp the concepts and can't mentally, you know, connect to the game. Whatever the case.
Yeah.
The point is that, you know, you have to think from the perspective of, hey, do I fit? You know, and can I see the coach trusting me? You know, those are the questions you have to answer for yourself.
So 6'4" and under. You know, like Nick Honor is a guy. I don't know if you know who Nick Honor is. Played for Each One Teach One.
Yeah, I remember Nick. Nick came to all our camps. Yeah.
Every name I get, they came to your camp. It's crazy. So Nick Dad is big on the girl side, EYBL. And Nick is a special kid, you know, floater, jump shot, all that kind of stuff. But he's like 5'8", 5'9". So the thing that was surprising is that he averaged high 20s at EYBL, which is awesome. Like, you average high 20s. You know, Colin Sexton averaged in the 30s, and that's what made his name. But he averaged high 20s in EYBL and still went to a smaller school, which is fine. So when he went to that smaller school, he dominated. Now he transferred to Clemson. You know, a pretty good.
Oh, is that where he wound up? I knew he transferred. I just didn't know where he wound up. So he wound up at Clemson. Good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's at Clemson, but I think he had to sit out a year or something like that. But it still gave him time for his dream of trying to make to the NBA. So that's awesome. But to go back to my point is, kids don't understand. Most kids are 6'4" and under. Most kids are 6 feet and under. They just don't understand how hard you have to work to be successful, like a Nick Garner, like a Colin Sexton in today's basketball game. They just don't understand that.
You do. That's true. That's true. They don't. But a lot of things in life we don't understand until we get in them. And a lot of life is about experience, and you can't know unless you go through the experience. But you know, if you got a little cheat sheet and you got people telling you, well, you better get prepared. You better tell your son they need to be prepared for this, and this. That's great. So preparation is one thing. Preparation is involves a lot of different things. Most people think, okay, we got to work. Well, they go in the gym and they just work. Well, that's great. How much time have you spent watching college basketball or how to play under circumstances?
That's a very good one.
How much time have you spent going over the team or the program you're going to, or if you're even going to one, but if you are going to one and you're getting ready to go down to school, have you watched any of their games from the previous season on video so that you know how they play, what they run in certain situations? how the coach coaches, even watching video of practices. That's what I would be watching. I wouldn't watch games. I watch video of their practices. I tell the coaches, send me video of their practices so I can watch the practices. That way you see what goes on in practice. You know what they like to do. You'll be ready. You can hit the ground running. Because coaches want to be able to trust incoming freshmen early, and they make up their minds early, like in your first few weeks of summer, when now you can practice in the summer, and as a team. And so when they're watching you, they're forming an idea of whether they can use you in come October, November, when the college season opens, believe it or not. And so you're like, well, that's not fair. But guess what? You better roll with it and be able to handle it, because if you are a guy that stands out to them that they can't use or can't trust, and they've sniffed that out early, shoot, you might be looking to you might have to transfer before you even really get there good. So the point is, you better know whether you fit. You better know what they run and be prepared. You better be watching video and get your ass out of the gym so much and more in front of a variety of ways to prepare. I mean, that's like paramount. I mean, you got to be able to make it through a practice. There are a lot of kids that can't make it through a practice. And when I say, I don't mean it physically, I mean cognitively. They just can't grasp what's going on in a college practice, and those college practices move at an incredible pace.
Yes.
I mean, they're in and out of stuff like this, and so you got to be able to, hopefully you've been well coached and well prepared. And it's no excuse if you haven't, because no college coach is going to accept that. You have to go get it yourself, and you have to find out how to do that.
No baby, no baby. Definitely no baby. So, like, my last question, Coach, is you always told me, even when me and you talked about Sean so many years ago, you always told me that you had, you said it today, that you had a great eye for not just talent, but a successful kid and stuff like that, somebody who was going to be something or whatever. All right, so could you give our audience a little taste of how do you see that? Because it can't just be a feeling. There's some things you got to see, and our kids need to have that. So what things do you see?
That's a great question. My only answer to that, other than having a gift from God, I think it has to do with who I am as a person. So, I kind of connect with the person at the same time I'm looking at them as an athlete, or as a basketball, or even an athletic talent. Somebody who, we've had a lot of guys who, played basketball, but they wound up in the NFL. I mean, so, Rico Gathers, who plays for the Dallas Cowboys, that dude never played football in his life, but he had a football body his whole life. And he played 4 years at Baylor. He was 6'7", like 280. So he's built a lot like Zion, very powerful kid, but, he was more of a front court player, limited scoring ability. The kid was made for football. And he made the Dallas Cowboys with no football background. He's a Louisiana kid, believe it or not. He's a Louisiana kid, and he had no football background. But the point being is, I knew that kid was going to go on to make something of himself in some way in sports. And football would have been my guess, because not only did he have the physical profile, but he had the heart and the toughness and the character and the discipline. And that's all the things that NFL football requires. Same could happen for Sean. And we've had another Cowboy, Taco Charlton. Yeah, Taco, who also played at Ohio State, and Taco's from Ohio. Taco, he's from Cleveland. Taco Charlton played at Junior All-American camp and Fat Frosh camp, I think. So I know he played at Junior All-American camp when he was really young. We didn't know he was a football guy. So, you know, I think I just have that ability to see something stand out about a kid, even when it's a kid that nobody's talking about and nobody sees anything special in. I discovered Steve Francis. A lot of people remember Steve Francis, the NBA All-Star guard from Maryland and DC, and you know, had a really good run with the Houston Rockets, and then, you know, injuries caught up with him, and he only played like 9 years in the NBA. But you know, I discovered Steve right in my neighborhood, and you know, tried to put him on. And since he wasn't ranked in high school, nobody wanted to give him a shot. You know, in all these events and all these camps and all these things, couldn't get on the right AAU teams, and so he played in my thing and blew up, and that got him to San Jack JUCO, and the rest is history. So. I think I just have an ability to see a person and what drives a person. I know their story. I think their story, I see how their story connects to what they ultimately become, because a lot of times they know their story drives them. You know, maybe something traumatic happened in their family background or in the kid's life in an early age. Or maybe the kid just has an internal drive that is just, you know, it's unstoppable.
Off the charts.
All right, very, very informative podcast again, man, and learning a lot. I really appreciate Coach Clay for giving us the opportunity to be on the podcast and, you know, drop some real deal nuggets and jewels with us today. So, Coach Clay, again, thank you for that. And I want everybody out there, like we always say, listen to the podcast, subscribe to it, and stay smooth.
All right, rest there. We out.